All right, let's see it. So these are the ruins of the Tower of Etemenanke, which are located a little outside of where Babylon was located, and scholars are pretty sure that this inspired the story of the Tower of Babel, but it's a bit of an own goal to point to these ruins as evidence for the story of the Tower of Babel, because they're actually evidence that the story is not historical, because this tower was originally constructed only around the time when Abraham would have been alive. But that's not likely the inspiration for the story, because the materials being used are actually more directly connected with the materials that were used in the Neo-Assyrian Empire in the 7th century BCE. And we know that this tower had fallen into disrepair and ruin in the 7th century BCE. There was an attempt to rebuild it and restore it, and it failed. And so the tower was left in a state of ruin for decades during the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And so the story is very likely a mocking of the Neo-Assyrian Empire for their failure to rebuild the Tower of Etemenanke. And so, again, this actually is evidence that the story is not historical. So saying that this pillar demonstrates that Lot's wife has been found exactly where mentioned in the Bible is pure and utter nonsense for at least two reasons. One, the Bible doesn't give any detail about where Sodom and Gomorrah were located in relation to the Dead Sea, much less where Lot's wife was located when she was turned to salt in the story. So pretty much anywhere around the Dead Sea would be exactly where mentioned in the Bible. And there are all kinds of pillars of salt that are located all around the Dead Sea. This one happens to have been nicknamed Lot's wife, but that whole mountainside is made up of salt and dirt. And that pillar is over 50 feet high. The notion that that is a human being who was turned into salt is nonsense. So that mountain is called Jabal Makla, and the bottom half of it is normal rock, and then the top half is covered in hornfels, which are rock that have been metamorphosed, darkened by some kind of geological heat process, lava flows and things like that. Now, it looks interesting here, but if you go look at Google Earth, you will actually see that there are hundreds and hundreds of square miles of mountain range and mountaintops that are covered in that type of rock in the Western Arabian Peninsula. And you can go look at my video number McClellan 1117 for footage that demonstrates that. So there is no part of the Bible that says Moses slashed any rock into two, and Numbers 20 just says that he was instructed to speak to the rock, but he instead hit it with a stick, and the water gushed out. So there are absolutely no data whatsoever that support the notion that this rock has anything to do with any historical occurrence associated with Moses and water gushing from a rock. So no ancient chariot has ever been identified by any archaeologist, no paper has ever been published, nothing has ever been brought up from the Red Sea, and all of the photographs that are circulated online are either modern machinery or they are just coral formations that someone thinks happens to resemble a chariot wheel. See my video number McClellan 1052 for why Ron Wyatt's discovery is nothing special. A smile on your face makes it easy to trust it. Most biblical archaeologists would tell you that we have not confidently identified the location of Ziklag. So Hezekiah's tunnel is absolutely real, and we have an inscription that commemorates the completion of the tunnel as well. And if you happen to be in Israel, I highly recommend going and hiking through it. It is a very unnerving experience. So this find is from Tel Lachish, and it may verify a statement from the book of 2 Kings that said a temple to Baal was desecrated and remains a latrine to this day. So this is an ankle bone with a nail driven through it that belonged to a man named Yehochanan, who was buried in an ossuary in 1st century CE Jerusalem, and it is one of our best attestations of the Roman practice of crucifixion. However, there is no connection whatsoever to Jesus.